Next, mate. All right, I think that's most of the stuff out the way. The agenda tonight, I'm just going to have a quick chat about some of the EV events. I, for some reason, just skipped over it last meeting, so I'll... you two can sit together, you know. Nathan or Mark, who are joining us tonight, have kindly agreed to take over the EV availability section that I do each month. They're more in that space and they've got more to say. Did you guys do the second-hand market stuff? I requested, last month I did the some of the cars that were coming to market, but you know, you've got the $300,000 Porsche and the $170,000 Audis and Mercedes. So I thought this month would be a good idea is to maybe have a look at what's available for second-hand market, just in case you guys are interested. So Les is going to have a chat about the electrifying conversations. We have Andrew Simpson's wife, Alina, here, who's going to have a quick chat about something she's working on called the Give It a Whirl, yep, concept. And then we're going to have a nice long chat to Andrew and quiz him about all things EV networks. So, did you want to say anything, Graham, in the front? Oh, Greg also wants to have a word. So, Greg McGarvey from... yeah, come on, Greg.
Thank you. Just real quick, hold you all up.
You're over here, mate. You have to speak into the mics, okay. And you have to stand in this exact spot.
Am I right? Okay. One thing I'll get you to do right now, hold your mobile phones up. You got a mobile phone?
No, it's...
Okay. Can you go to your mobile phone and type in, search engine, world, W-O-R-L-D, EV, day, D-A-Y.org. Now when that comes up, what you'll see next week is Australia is a foundation partner with the UK people that started out, Aid Thomas, and there'll be a link there that will have AEVA on there as well, the live link. So it's an opportunity for AEVA Australia to do a bit of recruiting, but the main reason that we're pushing the World EV Day is to start to change the conversation. I've already made contact with all the ministers around Australia, and funnily enough, they're interested because there's no risk to them. We've asked them to look for people in their state, clever people in the EV ecosystem, that they can come out and sort of make a little bit of an announcement on World EV Day. We already know there are going to be some key announcements coming out of different states, and the 9th of September, not far away, is the key. Sally in South Australia has already collected a heap of people together. They've got some pretty amazing things happening. And I know in the association some clever things happening that really need to be exposed. And you can expose them by going to the link on World EV Day, and then it'll flick back to a World EV Day Australia website, and on there the information can be put up. And that'll be used as sort of a compendium of everything in Australia that's good about what's happening in the EV sector. And there are a lot of things happening, it's just being hidden. The only other thing I'll mention very quickly, ACV Group are running a bi-directional trial, AC, onboard meter, mobile NIMI in other words, and onboard charger. And we're getting real traction with that. I had meetings today with the Australian Energy Market, AEMC, I forgot the proper title, met with AER, DER, ACE have been invited onto the AEMO task force, EV task force for data and distribution. And if we have it our way, we'll be able to have an influence where your EV is your home energy supply and can be a revenue generator, can be doing all sorts of things. With that, I'll quit. But thank you. Make sure you check out that World EV Day website and even put in a pledge there for your next EV.
This is an unscripted question, mate. Did you want to give an update on your car business and how that's struggling and with the whole COVID side of things?
Yeah, actually, thanks for that question. COVID has actually helped us. because we've been having meetings, Zoom meetings, and you know yourself, when you're meeting someone in their own house, all the normal meeting barriers are down. So we're actually making a lot of progress. And with global meetings, we've got a team working with us on the car out of California, Paris, other places. And our target with funding is starting next year. Funding's a critical one, and we keep being promised that it's coming, but that's been happening since February this year, but it's getting closer. And if everything's working well, by 2025, we'll be producing 24,000 units a year. 70% of them will be going overseas. We've already signed offshore agreements for assembly pods. Just embarrassing that we haven't actually started here in Australia yet. The only car we've built in Australia was last March at the MTAQ here in Brisbane. And I've got other things I can't tell you about at the moment, but very significant for September the 9th. And it'll boost the little old A series vehicles, really will boost them globally. And for those of you who probably don't know, we're building vehicles, composite, 100% composite vehicles, 1/3 the energy to build, and we're building a cargo, which is a van, a ute, and an urban. We've got a sports car in the pipeline, and then a Series 4 down the track, which is very clever, and it's a bigger version of our current vehicles. We're getting great traction and support from everyone except government. So with that, I'll leave you to it, and thanks very much for actually letting me come up and have a chat. That World EV Day, any questions I'll answer, but that World EV Day, get on there and repost the link everywhere, because what we want to do is get these politicians woken up in Australia. Thank you.
I just want to pardon my ignorance. I have no idea what your company is, so that's why I was asking.
Say again?
What's your company name?
Yeah, I'm the mystery man. My company is ACE Electric Vehicles Group. Yeah, ACE, and ACE stands for Australian Clean Energy. Yeah, and we've been working on this 4 years, and been a long haul. And as I said, we've got clever people working with us now globally, and it's just a matter of those politicians rolling over and saying, "Oh yeah, let's have a assembly and building industry here in Australia. We're shovel ready, just no money." Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks for that.
All right, thank you very much.
Thanks for everyone. Sorry about that.
No, you're all right. Love us and leave us. All right, I'll just quickly run through some of the EV events. I'll just quickly run through some of the EV events that we've got over the next couple of months. So, obviously there's been a few reschedules and postponements that have occurred due to the last few months of COVID, but there is one, the Noosa Transport Expo, I've been told by the people looking after that will be later in the year. The Brisbane Eco Expo, which has a lot of crossover with EV stuff, is September 11th to 13th. It's probably best if you just look up these online. There's heaps of info. Down at Byron, there's the Northern Rivers EV Forum, September 26th. And our National EV Expo has been essentially moved to online, and that will be a day of online, and there was meant to be I think Bryce was doing a road trip with a bunch of EV owners, and they were going to do a route around Victoria. I'm not sure if that's 100% a goer at the moment.
Chris says it's the 27th of November for National Expo.
27th, okay. The online conferences are 27th? Okay.
Yeah.
The AGM for AEVA is on the 3rd, or is the following weekend on the 3rd. There's another Byron Expo on October 3rd to 4th. and tentatively a Mount Tambourine Sunday in November. Sorry I don't have that much info on those, but thought I'd just skip through those just so you know stuff is still actually happening. So next up we're going to go on to who's speaking? Both of you? Yeah, okay. Is that right? Yeah, absolutely. Come up and have a crack.
It's like a sandwich, ice cream sandwich. Is this the right spot? Or we have to? Okay. Thanks, John. Good evening, everyone. My name's Mark, my colleague here, Nathan, who you would have heard speak at the last meeting, and we're from my consulting firm called Movement. So we saw John do the market update presentation at the last meeting and understand all of the effort, research and compiling of information that needs to go into that. And we recognise that as consultants in this space, we have a lot of that at our fingertips. Sorry, I'll just get the button. And so we offered to do that market update as AEVA members to lighten some of that load, I guess. We don't have anything to sell, so we just, we work in the information space, so it's just provision of information, basically. I'll start with a quick introduction of who we are, what the business is, because I know that some people wouldn't recognise us or know what we do. So we've both come from the auto industry. I spent a couple of years working in government programs and spent about a dozen years working as a consultant in the sustainable transport space with low emission vehicles and fuels. And so we both drive EVs, we're EV advocates, owners, lucky enough or silly enough, I'm not sure which, to combine that interest with the day job. So the day job is Movement, the business. So we work, I won't spend too long on this, we basically work in that nexus between government policy, so we provide strategic advice on government policy, innovation programs, business programs, and things like electric vehicle trials, evaluating trials and things like that, and working directly with fleets on saving fuel and transitioning to electric vehicles, but all low emission transport. That's probably, sometimes I guess we feel like, I wouldn't say the glue, but certainly the oil in between all of those cogs in that machine. And so I'm going to start with, we do a lot of our work in policy, so I'm going to start with a slide very quickly on policy, on that strategic policy. We often get questions around whether it's events like this or conferences where people say, why doesn't government do this, or why doesn't government do that, or perhaps being told that government should do certain things. So we'll start there. There seems to be a collective feeling that not enough is being done to support EV uptake. And I'll give you a quick run through. It's not intended to be exhaustive, but just a few of the things that are happening at national level, state level, and also local government level. And I'll start with one of the challenges. So one of the great benefits, obviously, of electric vehicles is their environmental credentials, and they've often been promoted from that perspective. And so what we've had is environment agencies within government typically promoting electric vehicles and electric vehicle uptake through the levers and policies that they can manage. That's great, because obviously electric vehicles have lots of environmental benefits. There's two challenges there though, and one of those is that then becomes a political wedge for one side of politics that might not want to be seen to be promoting environmental technologies or benefits. And then secondly as well, environment agencies don't hold all the levers for increasing the uptake of vehicles through regulation and policies. So transport agencies do a lot of that. And we know government agencies typically work in silos, and for these two, ends of the spectrum, those silos often come with other barriers as well. They speak a different language, basically. And so that's become a challenge. But we've started to see those barriers broken down, and so we're starting to see some policies that are emerging and a lot more integration between those different types of agencies. So at a national level, if we look at some of the things on that list there, so there's been a lot of money invested from the from ARENA, the Australian Renewable Energy Agency, so you can hear the green in that title. Several $1 million in charging infrastructure, studies and reports to increase EV uptake. And then more recently, we've seen the Departments of Transport come in and actually put some effort into this space as well. So through COAG, the Transport and Infrastructure Council, they're putting together a work program. Austroads, which is the National Road Agencies Industry Association, effectively, they've put a guidebook together for road agencies as well. And the federal government as well, we know that they've committed to a national EV strategy, which is overdue now. And the narrative there is shifting towards how does that strategy support technology uptake. So there's a discussion paper out on the technology investment roadmap. So the narrative there is shifting as well. And it's quite interesting. You can take a look at that. It's freely available online. At a state level, a whole range of programs and initiatives, different actions that the states are undertaking. Most of them are doing, particularly on the East Coast, including Queensland, most of them are combining a range of these measures from, strategic plans through to EV targets specifically, a certain number or percentage of EVs, discounts for owners on registration, stamp duty, for example, policies to support EV uptake in their own fleets, and obviously charging equipment as well. We know here in Queensland, in New South Wales, in Tasmania, governments have funded charging for the public. And then at a local government level, we're also seeing, I think that's just stopped.
Can you press the button? Sorry. After it's about time, just turn.
That's all right, it's okay. Should I wait because it's recording?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I think, no, it's not working. Technology. I'll try it. Is that working? No. Is that, yeah, that's better. Yeah. And then actually local governments, so councils, are leading the charge in some of this space. They've aligned their fleet policies with, some of them have aligned their fleet policies with their climate change targets. A lot of them are looking for transition plans, so how do they move their fleet and support ratepayers as well, so the community in transitioning their fleet. And we've worked with a few of those. Big focus on costs, not upfront cost, but total cost within that 3 to 5 year period that they keep them. And then also building charging infrastructure as well. So I've got up there in blue 3 different examples of, I guess, what you'd call best practice. At a national level, we've got Norway, Netherlands, New Zealand, all quite different in what they're doing, but you could consider them best practice, all the N countries. At a state level, ACT, not really a state, but let's call it a state. And then at the local level, Canterbury, Bankstown. We could probably pick off half a dozen councils. I've used those ones because you can go online and just Google EV support with those jurisdictions and you'll see what they're doing. So pretty easy to find that information. Last thing I'll do before I hand over. Hot off the press today is the EV Council's State of Electric Vehicles. So this is an annual report that gives an update on what the state of the EV market is in Australia. Really quite useful. There's some interesting info there. So 3 of the bits in that little icon graphics up here. It's been a doubling in EV sales from 2018 to 2019, doubling of the market, while the rest of the car market has actually gone down. And that means that EVs have tripled their market share effectively in a year. I mean, we've got to admit, starting at a pretty low number of 0.2% of the market. There was a survey that was done to support this report that found more than half of people looking for a new vehicle would consider an EV, which is really encouraging as well. And apparently 68% of people concerned about range anxiety and needing public charging. So whole range of different and interesting insights there. It's one information resource. You know, best to look across at several different information resources, but it's a great starting point. 99 pages of interesting reading. Before I hand over to Nathan, one of the interesting things to me is that a lot of the policy in this space, which is what I've been talking about, is focused on new vehicle sales, and in particular, obviously, what we call OEM vehicles or production vehicles. There's not a lot of policy on the second-hand market in particular, or even conversions. So just as a straw poll, I haven't gone out and looked in the car park, but how many people operate a production vehicle, a production EV? Hands up. Scott, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, about half. How many people drive a conversion? So something that's not a production car. Okay, so just a few. And how many do both? How many have both? Okay, all three. That's fascinating. That's probably a pretty good segue actually over into Nathan's section, which is about the used vehicle market. So I'll hand over and I'll come back in at the end.
Thanks, Mark. So one of the things that John asked me when I said, hey, we're going to do this and we're going to have we're going to provide you this little bit of horsepower to give John a bit of a relax. He said, have a go at used cars for us this time around. Have a look at the second-hand market. So did a little bit of study for the second-hand market, the second-hand EV market in Australia, and thought I'd have a look at this in two ways. How many are out there available to us to buy, and what kind of price range do they look like at the moment? And this is using car sales data that is on the system, today, and I think I pulled it on the weekend or thereabouts, or early this week. And go on, next slide. What's going on here? Right, cool. So starting off with how many, this is a bit of a snapshot. There's 209 EVs on the pure BEV EVs, obviously. Oops, sorry. Pure BEV EVs on car sales at the moment. So there's a reasonable chunk, but it only represents about 0.2% of all of the vehicles that are on car sales today. So it's not quite aligned with the market penetration of new vehicles at 0.6, which we just saw come out in the EV Council's report, but it's getting there. One of the things that surprised me when I did this is to find that the Gen 2 Leaf is the most populous of used EVs in the marketplace, followed by the Leaf Gen 1, which is the import version, and you can understand through car sales, which are then the Australian versions, the Australian Delivers, which are the smaller wedge. So the colours basically depict brand, and the blocks are what I would call variants, and there are 16 different variants that are represented. And then you can see here there's the volume, so 16 Model X's there as the example. So this is the whole entire bottom of the market to the top of the market. So there's a reasonable amount of choice out there. All these vehicles here are represented by vehicles that have number plates on them that are being sold as either demos or used vehicles. They are not new vehicles speculating to sell a vehicle. So they should be true EVs. But one of the things I also noticed is that there were no conversions on there. On this, search by fuel type, search by EV, there's no conversions being sold in that space. So one of the things I was thinking of, as Mark was, is making sure that when we provide data and insight, which we expect to do over the coming months, that we try and balance that with the conversion side of AEVA's mandate or interest, as well as the OEM side. And so, we didn't see anything there. Now, because they're special, maybe they're sold via a different channel than car sales. I mean, I can't expect you to sell the Cortina through car sales. You probably sell it to someone in this room or thereabouts. But I guess keeping that in mind. So then, what do they cost us? What could I buy? So what this graph represents is price up the side, and each individual variant, I hope it's big enough to see, each individual variant has a band of price. So say, for instance, the third one along, just got a big Nissan badge in the middle there. That's the Nissan Leaf Import. Starts just under 20 grand. And runs to about 32 or 35 grand, and gives you a bit of an insight that you can buy that vehicle in that band somewhere in Australia. What it shows us is that there's 4 variants that have opportunities to buy vehicles under 20 grand, so that's reasonably priced. down the left-hand side, and that there are 8 variants, but also basically 50% of all ads in that set of vehicles are priced at under $50,000. So hopefully that gives us a bit of an idea of the stuff that we could go out and buy if we wanted to. That is in a price range that's available. It shows a few things also, like Model S has now gotten cheaper than Model 3 from ads on the market. So that's an interesting change that I've seen occur in the last 3 months or so. And there's lots of Jags if you're interested in one, but they are at the other end of the spectrum. I wonder why. And the Hyundais actually do have quite a spread. They're starting to see a few vehicles at a good nearly $10,000 spread. So something to go at. Has anybody got any questions around the used car market piece before I move away from that? Yes, please.
What about wrecked cars?
What about what?
Wrecked cars.
Wrecked cars. Yeah, I do a bit of a sweep on that every now and again, and I've placed it in the AEVA group before on Facebook. There are a few. They're often written off Teslas. I reckon the best person to keep their eye on where wrecked EVs are is that man over there. I reckon Graham's probably got the finger on the pulse, and anytime something comes up. Alex? Right. So you get your inside line from Alex. So I think there is a couple of things, but what I look at is Mannheim. So Mannheim have a good app online, and you can search by salvage vehicles as well as new good to go vehicles. And I sit on my couch on a weekend and have a look at that every now and again. So I'd suggest having a look there. Any other questions on used? Yep.
Which cars are holding their value?
Not part of this study, but you can start to have a look at who's not. The Jags probably not, because there's vehicles that would have been purchased at about 130, 135 that are now 109 in less than a year. That's kind of okay, that's who's not. I don't think there's enough sample size, but the i3 seems to be up near its price range, and it's been being sold since 2015, 2014, long time, right? So there aren't that many early i3s that are actually available in the marketplace. When they do pop up, they weren't here. I've seen them at about 30, 35. So it's about opportunity. This is a small snapshot in time from earlier this week. On that front, I think it's probably more about i3. There isn't much volume and there isn't much availability as there are holding their price, but they don't do too badly. Moving on from that, just wanted to bring you up to speed with a couple of other bits of news, a bit like John does, but this is sort of slightly different. I'm not sure if anybody else is in this program, but I am. I have a little black box. Andrew's in there as well. Yep, excellent. So there's a few of us in this room who've got a little black box that we fitted to our car, and Energy Queensland are paying us a little bit of money for us to help them with a lot of data. And we're providing them basically every single trip. They know how far we went, how much energy we used. They also understand when, where and how we are charging. And so that they can then start to use that detail to build on. I've also got access to a lot of data around my car now. And so this data here is my July month screenshot. And you can see the amount of energy that I've used on this particular graph, on the amount of energy I've used on which day, and my combined, my confined consumption, which actually is slightly higher than my car reads. Sir, I think you got a question.
Do you use that with the Albion?
Possibly. It's yep. Okay, good. It's just CAN bus, and it's decoding CAN bus information, but it's also vehicle moves, vehicle doesn't move, so no reason why not. Why are they doing this? Oh, Graham, explain. Yes. Sure.
So when you plug in to charge, is it recording the amount of time that it's actually plugged in, or the amount of time that the actual charge is going through the cable? Because
both, to my understanding. Everything. So what's it capturing? Everything. I'm sure they'll come back to me with speeding fines later as well. No, not quite. So it's going through a third party. It's a Canadian company whose bit of gear it is, a Fleet Karma device, which is a pretty cool bit of kit. Little self-fitted patch harness, didn't take too long. and then also they're capturing all sorts of data, because if I plug into Endra's network and I'm Cooching Creek or something like that, it knows that I'm there, it knows what speed I'm pulling, it knows how much I stopped for and gathered of energy, and even the consumption in the previous trip, say for instance. So what they're going to do with this data will be probably the very, very top level skim, and there's going to be loads they can do with the data. So having spoken to the guys who have instigated this program, they're really keen for this data to become open source, for research work to be done by universities and make the most of it. So there might still be some places, so if you look out for the Smart Charge program by Energy Queensland, Google that, you will find a website, you will find an email, and maybe you can still get on the program. Mark's just joined just recently. Bye-bye Zoe. Not sure if you've heard about this, but Renault Australia have decided that it's all a bit too hard to sell electric cars, and they have now chosen to remove the Zoe from the market and not provide the new 2020 model Zoe, which is the really good one. They only ever sold 63. The poor old Zoe was hampered from the beginning with about 75 vehicles being damaged on a boat, and that slowed down the deliveries that were going to make it to the original automakers by 12 to 18 months. They all got bored, bought Ionics, and the whole Zoe process just went a bit wrong here in Australia. Renault goes on to sort of blame the market, blame the government, blame everybody else. I think they could have done better. But they've also got a challenge where they've got to put every single Zoe that they have into a European Union market to get as much credit as they possibly can to offset the challenges that they have with their fuel efficiency standards in Europe. So this is a precursor to the challenges we may face here in Australia, where European markets are such a large black hole, sucking all of the volume of EVs in Australia, from the rest of the world to satisfy the need of Europe. So you can still get one. There are 22 new and used on site, and the cheapest one is about $9,000 less than it was when it was first being sold. So you can snap yourself up a Zoe now. Hyundai, on the other hand, have doubled down on EVs globally, but also here in Australia as well. They've decided to launch a brand called Ionic. And it's not just about the car, it's about all of their electrified brands. They have committed to launching 3 new vehicles over the coming 3 years, and including the Ionic 5, which is kind of, crossover, Q3 sized car, something about that sort of size, Tiguan sized vehicle. Anyway, that's going to be an interesting one. They've committed to 500,000 EVs a year by 2025, and Hyundai Australia are really committed to the whole EV space as well. So I don't expect them to do a Renault and pull vehicles out. So for this session, I thought we'd do a little bit of used and a little bit of who's here and who's going in this case with Renault. Let's hope we don't see any more of that. But what we also wanted to do was we wanted to ask you, as we're going to do this session for the next many months, as much as John and you guys would like us to, as to what you would like to hear from us within this sort of 15, 20 minute, hopefully it's taking a bit longer than that, slot, so that we can provide you that kind of insight. What do you want to hear from a policy piece? And the sort of work that we do outside of what Mark talked about around policy is also, we do total cost of ownership modelling, we do trials of EVs, we do a lot of work in heavy vehicles. We're probably heavy vehicle experts, we would say that, and we help fleets transition to EVs. So there's those sorts of things. And we also, we would traditionally talk about market updates, which is what John has traditionally done, and maybe new technology. If somebody comes at, battery day for Tesla is in however many days now, a month away. So it's technologies that come out there. So just a quick straw poll to the room, what sort of things would you like to see that we can then make sure that we bring to the fore? You like a bit of heavy vehicles? Good. Commercial vehicles, so okay, great, good, thank you. Yeah. More of the same. You like what was happening tonight? Good. Yep.
I like the stuff on grid transition, so
Okay. Yeah. A journey to transition. Good. Thank you. Excellent. Anybody else?
I think an update on infrastructure coverage would be fantastic.
Yeah. So I think we've left that with John. So I mean, we will definitely do that if you want to, or we could. Yeah. Well, I think that's right. We've gone upstream here. We've gone upstream of just the wires and the bits of plastic, and we've gone to the man who can. I think one of the things that you mentioned last time is that between in the hiatus of COVID, there actually wasn't that much new installation in Queensland. At that last event, I think you mentioned, John. So I think what we can do with infrastructure coming online is we can add that as and when it comes about.
The other thing is too, I didn't want to represent the same presentation every single month. So I think
theming.
Say 5 monthly is probably sufficient to talk about what charges are coming online.
Yeah. And we quite happily take a theme like we did with used tonight, the second-hand market, and if there's another theme like how trials work or a heavy vehicle theme, we're happy to take that up because we've got all that stuff just sort of sitting in the cupboard. Good.
I think, Nathan,
Yep.
if a new car comes to market,
Yep.
we have a focus on that. That's one suggestion.
Yeah. So definitely, and I think and I'd like to ask from you, when they launched the Lucid Air, that's not coming to Australia for 3 or 4 years. Do you want to hear about it? Or do you want to wait until we're actually going to get it and we'll focus on something different? Because I would say we wait until we get it. There's literally hundreds. I'd quite happily stand up here and talk about the Peugeot E208. We're not going to get it, probably ever. So I'm not sure if that's much value to us.
Probably more focused on what the Australian market's getting.
Sure. As much as I would absolutely love to see the E208 or the E-Corsa come, it's just not going to happen. So, look, thank you very much. We probably took a little bit longer to tell you where we're at. Go on.
Sorry, one that I just thought of.
Yes?
Actually, we're talking about imports. Are there any of those vehicles on the second-hand people importing?
Yeah, tons of them. There's the van guy up here on the north side. I've got an old friend of mine who's on the south side. He's import auto sales, and I told him go and buy EVs, and he's buying EVs. So he's got some NV200 vans, both in van version and in people mover version. And there's a number of them out there. They're the cheap ones on the list that we talked about there. There's a particular market for that. Not everybody's up for that. I wouldn't buy an import, but that's just me. Other people will, and that's great. And I think it's an interesting market. It's what's made New Zealand work. New Zealand is the only market in the world with over 1% market share in EVs that doesn't have incentives, and that's because they have imports. So, it's an important part of the market, but they're limited in volume and so on. We could do a deep dive into imports for you because I understand all the rules behind that. Excellent. Thank you very much for your feedback, and also give feedback to John, give feedback to us, taps on the shoulder. We've been movement.
Thanks, Martin. Thanks, Nathan. Graham and Jan wanted to have a bit. Andrew's going on doing Andrew after.
Readers members?
Right over here.
Oh, I need
Should
the
have-
mic one. It's all
should
spread out. Which is it? Which is this?
This one here.
That do that? What do I have to do?
You have
It
to
on my
talk into it.
Okay. All right.
There you go.
Can we hear me now? Great. Yeah, we're all. Yeah. Oh, stand there. Okay, the spot. Yeah, that'll. Is that good? Clear? Oh yeah, the camera. Hello, people on video. Hello. Okay, I put an article on the AEVA discussion group very late this afternoon and most of you probably haven't seen it, but it was just such a good article from The Driven, which is the Renew Economy podcast about electric vehicles. I couldn't resist it. And it's called How Norway Ended the Ice Age and Why It Should Inspire Australia. So fortuitously, Graham was able to print it. And it starts off talking about how good it was seeing Craig Rucastle on Fight for Planet A on Tuesday night, burning off a very powerful Holden Commodore thing in a Tesla that he'd never driven before, and it was really good to see such a positive image of electric vehicles in Australia. So yeah, this could be our moment if we wanted to take advantage of it, but we need to do a few things that we haven't maybe done before. This Thursday, the Australia Institute has a webinar, that's tomorrow night, on electrifying our roads, Norway's way, and Graham will take up a very important point about that. It features Christina Boo, who's the head of Norwegian Electric Vehicle Association, and Giles Parkinson, the founder and editor of Renew Economy and The Driven, talking about Norwegian electric vehicle policy and why it could be like that here. The Senate Select Committee made a report detailing how Australia could embrace the opportunities, and nothing has really happened, contrary to what our previous speakers were saying. In fact, the policy seems to be not to have a policy. The original strategy was expected in 2019, delayed to now. If you read all the way through the progress update put out by the Minister for Energy and Emissions Reductions, you'll find that he has said that there's now going to be another delay, and if you go to the actual website, you get a 404 error. So there's nothing happening. And that really is very reprehensible in this age, and for people like us, we need to be doing something about this. The authors say that the end of the Ice Age is coming, of course, but we need to hurry it along. The transition is inevitable because electric vehicles are a much better technology. The petrol-powered car has lots of problems. Our petrol resource is only 3 weeks long and it's kept in the United States. So if something happens, there's a little matter of the Pacific Ocean between us and our petrol reserve. Norway has huge support, and everybody loves EVs and they're totally normal there. So as previous speakers were saying, the ACT has a very good policy on electric vehicles, and it shows what could be done. They don't have stamp duty and they have a 20% discount on registration fees. So that sort of incentive program could really make electric vehicles get up and go. But we have to make that happen. I know what's wrong with our governments. It's called obsequiousness to the fossil fuel industry, but we have to somehow break that and get out there and make electric vehicles more easily accessible for everybody, take the luxury tax off them so they're not so exorbitantly expensive, point out the problem with being a dumping ground for high emission ICE vehicles. So yeah, I think that we need to start using this moment that Craig Rucastle has given us to try to lobby, and there's a state election coming. You can't expect much from elections, but we shouldn't just let it go past and do nothing. We should try to make something out of this and get more electric vehicles on the roads and more accessible to everybody. Thank you. Graham has some very fine points to make.
I'm basically going to cover what you said, Jan. And I'll probably ruffle a few feathers by saying this, but I think really it's time the AEVA started being a little bit of a lobby group and starting to push home some of their points. I was told in no uncertain terms 12 months ago to pull my head in because I suggested something like this, that the AEVA is non-political. But I believe lobbying a government, who cares what brand of politics they are, but to lobby a government to improve the situation for electric vehicle owners, to push along for more electric vehicles, be it buses, trucks, cars, whatever, to put in place that infrastructure. After all, our, if you want to use the term dark enemy, the fossil fuel industry, they lobby the hell out of governments, both parties. All right, so we're just sort of pushing back a little bit. Doesn't mean we're political, doesn't mean we're going to follow any particular party or anything like that, but the point Jan's making is we need to step up and start putting forward the point of view. We've got a really a friendly ear in Mark Bailey, and I hope they come back again because he's been very supportive. We've got the door open. Mark will welcome us by our first name, some of us that turn up to some of the government meetings. So, we need to grasp that situation, engage with the state government as a branch and start to see what can we do. We've got some great advocates in this room. We've just talked to the boys over here. Andrew, I'm trying to think of all the different names of all the different people that we've engaged with. It's probably time to be a little bit of a lobby group and start putting forward ideas that we would like to see. Like I said, in Queensland, we have a pretty friendly government. They put in all these charges for us. We need to roll with this. We need to keep moving on it. That's about all I've got to say on that subject. The other thing, if anyone's interested, we've got a bit of a battery special on, so just come and see me if anyone's doing any projects. Greg and I have put together a order of 5,000 cells, and so if anyone wants to tag what they require onto it, then we can add that to it. So just come and see me. Have you got something to add?
Final point, very important final point. Okay, stand where the camera can see me. Yeah, who in this room has ever lobbied a member of parliament, either gone to their office, bailed them up in a shopping centre, even sent them a letter or a phone call or anything like that? Who has ever done that? Right, okay, great. Who in this room would be willing to do that if we provided you with some training and advice and support? Okay. Yeah, tick your names on the list on the way out and we'll be in touch. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone for coming along. So last year I was invited to go to the Electrifying Conversations, and this was run by D West, and it was a trip around New Zealand where we were looking at what conversations we could start with different people to see how electrification could help them. So sorry about the picture, but Dee's picture's a bit small there. But if you ever met Dee, she's like really, really excited lady, and she's very, very helpful. So she doesn't really care what political party you belong to. She's more interested in what you have to say and how that can help other people. So, so Dee and her ex-husband, Steve, they started ChargeNet. So that's the largest electric charging, like privately owned electric vehicle charging network in the world. So they didn't just talk about it, they did it. So they're very passionate about electrification, and they're very generous, and you could see that they're trying to make sure that everybody can understand and then help come together to the same place. So a part of the Electrifying Conversations was to go around New Zealand and speak with different sectors and try and find out what their concerns are, what they needed, and how they could start transitioning, what help they needed, if they needed anything. So, and the main areas of that were energy, entertainment or tourism, government, infrastructure, local councils and their residents, manufacturing and transport.
I just punched it, what do I do? I just added someone in, that's it.
Yeah. You're right, whoops. Yep. So the first one we looked at was energy suppliers. So New Zealand has a big mix of different energy suppliers. So we had a lot of different ones from Mercury Energy, many different ones, including the original, if you see up there, the Wairaki. So that is one of their original thermal plants. It still works today. Still pumps out lots of energy. But with each kind of energy, there was a conversation around how do you improve that energy production. So the original Wairaki, when it spits out the hot water, it goes into the lake, and then that goes into the river. And even though that's all natural and always was in the ecosystem, it actually slowly builds up sulfur levels in the water. So there's pros and cons to every different energy source, but it was more about, well, they, So if you look, sorry, it's a bit blurry, but this one here, that's their new plant, and their new plant will draw the water out, use it for electricity, and then they will actually re-inject the water back in. So they've gotten rid of that fault. But it did have a side effect. Now there's these huge silver pipes that go all along the ground, because they may draw it from kilometres away and then have to put it kilometres back. So each one has a pro and a con, and that's where the conversations begin. So that's where the electrifying conversations are meant to be, because you need, like, you want the renewable resource, but you have to get the people's willingness to accept the giant silver pipes along the ground, or the fields of solar panels, or the giant windmills, or your coal plant. Like, it doesn't matter which one, it's the conversation that needs to happen. Because people accept things a lot, but if you put it in and you never have the conversation, well, then they're going to be angry. So that's the part we need to have. So there's many challenges, and they have been going through, and in this case, the waste from the thermal plants can actually have good consequences. So there are farms that use that warm water so that they can grow things that normally wouldn't grow in that region. And also, I know there was one company who was using the warm water to help in their brewery so that they could just use naturally hot water instead of having to use electricity. So there was a lot of good benefits. Pardon? Wow, I mean, it'll be cold when it gets to you, but it'll be hot for a while. Yeah, so these things were happening, and Dee's very good at bringing those people together. And I think that's something that we need to do as well, because it's not one or the other. If the world was black and white, then we wouldn't have these conversations. But it's not. There's lots of different things, and they all need to come together. So entertainment views, so the conversation was around encouraging adoption. So what can you do? So one of the main ones we had was electrification for entertainment infrastructure. So while we were in Rotorua, there's a big theme park, and most of it's already electrified. So you jump on the carriage and it'll take you right to the top of a big hill, and then you see there, you just jump on the little carts, you zoom your way down, and then you jump on the electrified transport to take you back to the top. So these things are coming through, so they're asking for like passenger movements, environmental practices. So it's not just about that, it's just about like, as a whole, what can they do to lessen their impact on the environment? The other good ones they're having was like tourism. We're like, well, what can we rent to people? If you come to our area and you want to visit, you know, what things can we do to do that? And so people started doing, like, so there's a lady testing electric e-bikes. So they were putting them up, there were 4x4s, there were numbers of different items. So they want it so that, yeah, you can come to our area and then you can explore it and you can have fun, and local residents don't get all the noise, but people can have fun and not destroy the place. The other one that we took a trip to was there was a motorsport park at Leven, and that's the Bruce McLaren motorway, and they were looking at putting in electric chargers so that people, because right now people have to drive out of town to the ChargeNet charger to charge up and then drive all the way back. So they were thinking, well, maybe we should put in electric charging stations so then they can come for the day and have events. So I thought that was a great idea. And the other one is that even though Steve and Dee put in lots of electric chargers, there's still room for more. For more duplication, to reduce waiting times if there's any, and to fill in empty spaces which currently right now don't have enough usage to warrant the spending to put them in. So the next conversations were about implementing appropriate policy. So the main thing on these was talking with like the politicians and their constituents on what can be done to improve their lives. So the main issues were there's no point putting something in if it doesn't do anything for anyone. So you need to do that. But on the other side, if you do that, you need to foster the change so that people know what to use with it. So you need to change it from being, oh, that electric station's only for people, rich people with expensive cars, to that's a station that works for all people. Anyone can have an EV, and it makes it more useful. So there was many talks about plans. Now the plans aren't always about EVs specifically, but they may be around that. So there was one, we visited Taranaki, and they have oil and gas areas, mainly gas, and they use that to produce chemicals, and they're looking at using wind and hydrogen to generate those gases that they need. So then they can stop drilling. So there's many different things coming through. But yeah, the main one there was buy-in. Like, there's no point talking unless you can get the people to buy in, because otherwise they won't support it and it just becomes useless. So for infrastructure and industry, the main conversation was around installing the necessary infrastructure. So they need this infrastructure to transform their industries. So there was what input they wanted. So there were areas where a lot of stuff gets pulled from ports and transmitted to the different places around New Zealand. So the main interest, well, look, at that time they looked at it and said, look, battery electric, it's not going to cut it. It will need to be hydrogen trucks. So then they looked at, well, what can we do to make that hydrogen as clean as possible and provide that infrastructure? And who should pay for it? Like, should industry put some money in? Should it all be government? Where should they be put? So that was a great conversation because, I don't know if you can see, but that was the local minister, the local mayor, and that was well, they don't have federal, but that was the Minister for Transport. So they were all there and they were all talking about it. And it was good because not everyone had all the answers straight away, but the conversation was started, and it wasn't nasty conversations. It was all about, well, what can we do with our money that will make these things better? So there were a lot of things we're discussing, like what are the benefits, what are the opportunities that may arise from having this infrastructure installed, and then how do we communicate this to the community so they know that we're spending their money in the best way to provide better outcome for their lives. And then we had the transport. So in this one, the main conversation is really like, how do we deploy this new technology? So what are the benefits? So if we electrify this bus, what is the difference? Why would you electrify this bus? So, and things came out from, it's a lot cheaper. Once you get over the initial cost, it runs much cheaper. It's easier to service. It's quiet. People like it being quiet. So then that led to, well, are there health benefits? So these buses, they zoom in and out of the city. So it had a health benefit of that it would not be putting out diesel where before there were diesel. There was more financial stuff also because they were just starting to build this electric ferry. So surprisingly, watercraft were chewing a lot of fuel for them to move along the harbour. So I think it's almost finished now, and that will save a lot of money. And then the last one from that came to, well, how do we deploy this to fleets? What are the conversations that they need to have between government, private and fleet owners to get them encouraged to use these vehicles, to put in infrastructure to support those vehicles? So that was it for that one. But that was the main one, was just starting those conversations. So, and as everyone before me has hinted the same thing, everyone wants to start conversations. So I think, yeah, we should start that very soon. Well, more soon, but more friendly. It doesn't matter. I have seen some people saying, oh, that's always a left idea, but it's not really, because I've seen two different sides have the same policy for totally different reasons. It doesn't matter. The main one is what does it do good for us, like, as the people who use it. So that's what we're after. So yeah, so thanks very much.
Thank you, Les. Yeah, Jan's point and Jan and Graham's points and your conversation piece seem to tie in actually quite similarly. And we are only at the beginning of things for EVs, but I think that if enough of us do make like the relevant points to the people that are listening, then we get adoption a lot faster. We're going to have Alina come up and mention her concept. Does anyone need a quick stretch? Anyway, we all good? Stand up, take 5 minutes. And then I'm going to chat to Andrew, and that's going to be a reasonable length conversation. And then it'll be just free time after that. And Francesco's brought in his motor and a battery, probably the biggest battery I've ever seen, other than the Konas. But he's going to get that up and running. That's not going to be part of the presentation, so you guys can just check that out afterwards. Okay, Alina, up you come. I'm just hold on to it.
Oh. Great. Thanks everyone for having me tonight. I'm a late stage ring-in, so I'll be brief. I know quite a few of you, but for those of you who don't know me, my name's Alina Dini. I have the privilege of being Andrew Simpson's wife, so that's one plus. I also have the privilege of being an EV owner and advocate for almost 15 years, so that's another plus. A few of you have seen me here before or heard about my research on electric vehicle consumers, which is why I'm here today. So I'm going to start with a question. We know everyone in the room has an EV or has driven one, but how many people have given someone else a test drive before? Cool. How many of you got paid for it? Yeah, EV, yep. Mm-hmm.
25, 26 people have hired it, and 4 have gone directly to purchase.
Perfect. That is an excellent segue into my concept, as John introduced, which, as of today, is a company, which is why you haven't heard about it before. So I am here to talk to you really briefly about Whirl. So Whirl is a concept that's come out of my research. Oh.
This happens.
Stay tuned.
Turn it off.
Is it working? Okay, great. And we're back. So Whirl is a concept about reimagining the EV shopping experience. So not the buying experience, but the experience that brings you to the point of deciding to buy an EV. And the concept I had is that there's so much valuable knowledge coming out of every one of you in this room, and we've all done our bit to share that experience with someone before, but not in a formal capacity. So what I'm looking for at this early stage are people like you to come and talk to me about your experience sharing electric vehicles with someone, so that I can formulate a bit of a base to develop a community of users that can then share those experiences with EV shoppers. So I will send through to John, or actually just post on social media and the forum, some links, but really look for your involvement going forward, because I think to the points that Les have made and Jan has made and a couple of others, the community aspect about EVs is the part that's so spectacular that once people become aware of and understand the technology a bit better, they really come to enjoy. So let's see how we can leverage that to increase adoption. Thanks for your time.
All right. Thank you. I just need 1 minute. I'm going to reset the cameras and just set some chairs up. So if you want to stand up and have a stretch, all good.